Okay, here we go. Yeah, hello, hello, hello. You're out there. It's the Mighty Quinn coming in. Today's topic, I wanted to talk about. I sparked this conversation up with my cousin Rock earlier this morning, and just wanted to have a conversation on. We talking about the state of the Black Union, the Civil Rights Movement, um, through the music industry. Like you had and back in the days we had the Chitterling circuit, and then we had the music industry, which was the angel and the devil rolling at the same time. Well, actually, the music industry didn't exist. It bounced out of the Chitlin circuit, which was basically black people doing their thing and entertaining each other. And the history of entertainment, like even sports, down to cooking for each other and serving plates for each other, food served, sharing, amongst each other, And I'm just opening the line for anybody to question anything about the music industry, or just the things that happened in. I would let me say just what happened in music, and if you have any questions, I'd like to read any comments and try to help answer those questions. And basically, my history is from the 70s all the way up to now. So that's why I'm here. That's what I represent. Um, I know my history going back because I was raised by my elders, and I was around my grandparents more than I was around my parents. Well, I would say equal. I would say when I was young, and but a lot of information was given to me by my family. Peace to my family out there. First, I want to give thanks to God, and and back to what we was talking about. Um, a lot of information and truths and non-truths and stuff that I was told when I was a kid, and being around music and, watching my elders singing, playing the piano, writing songs, the whole, even in going through the whole hip hop b-boy movement, the gangs back in the 70s, the street, all of the street knowledge stuff, and then all of the conscious community. I was in all of that. I delved into all of that, and which, being around Juilliard and the performing arts, I lived in that area where Diana Ross, Nipsey Russell, Bill Cosby, I would see just so many people walking around that were on TV. I was actually seeing them on the sidewalk. My friends, some of my friends, Terrence Howard from up in Harlem, Sugar Hill, just people that branched out from there. He's as well one of those people that branched from that area and has a lot of knowledge on what was going on in New York back then, and our relationships back then, how they changed from then to now. So if anything, I'd like to see some questions come in. I don't know how to do this. This is my first time going through this. Just wondering if I'm just this is my first time doing this. As far as any questions, I don't know how this is gonna come out, but I'm just gonna talk. Basically, I see three people up there, and I'm just gonna basically just ring out a couple of things in the music industry. What I noticed from the music industry, growing up from a baby. My father is a musician. He's a vocal teacher, and I had my father's delving in with the oh boy, playing well. The music that we listened to was Brass Construction, Earth, Wind and Fire, a lot of Stevie Wonder, a lot of the young stuff. He had me singing a lot of the young Stevie Wonder stuff. Your eyes don't shine like they used to shine, and the thrill it's gone, oh, it's gone, which was one of my favorite songs. And excuse the voice, I got a little graggly in my throat, dry throat. But from that time, just learning all of the old favorites. Ray Charles was popular. Aretha Franklin, number one favorite for my grandmother was Mahalia Jackson, and going up to Shirley Caesars and the Winans, and just coming up through all of that stuff from gospel to jazz to rhythm and blues to even when they came into rave music and all that stuff. That was all there at that time. We had a big variety of music to pick from. But my dad worked with the Spinners. He worked with BT Express. He worked with this cat named what is it? He was a black country singer. I can't remember right off the bat, but going in with him, I grew up in a very, how you said, a structured household. We grew up in Islam. We grew up our dual belief system, cultural system, Baptist and Islam, being on my grandmother's side, and then for my mother, and from my father's side was Islam. And so what we learned is that what I learned is that I'm hearing music from gospel, I'm hearing Islamic music, and the prayers that they do, and they singing their prayers when they made salat. And it's just, you have to remember, it was just so much stuff going on at the time. It was Latin music at the same time, being that we have Puerto Rican ancestry, and which moved me a whole lot, which was the Fania records, La Fania on records, sound, and which was bumping through the streets of New York at the time. And then you had a lot of the funk music that was going on with Cameo, and you talking about Tavares, and just naming a few. But to get to it, what we did back then was basically we gave, I guess, more thought on music was an entertainment for each other. And excuse me, I gotta take my shirt off. Get a little warm down here. And we did music to entertain each other. Just like this is where the block parties were. We had free block parties where people we knew in the neighborhood would had some speakers in their household, and they put them out on the sidewalk, or they had some speakers that was really huge, and they went into the basketball court, and they put them up on the basketball court at the projects, somewhere on the street, or somewhere where the park was the entrance of the park. You had the roller skaters, and you had so much going on at the time, but everything was wrapped around music, and we connected through that. And that's how we got to meet each other, through music as kids. When a song played, like you would hear Marvin Gaye's "Sexual Healing," or you would hear Barry White songs, or you hear Earth, Wind and Fire, Reasons, and you would connect with each other through that time. You start talking, and you make friends through listening to music. And you had the Puerto Rican icy lady running around, and you had kids playing games, and you had basically just a plethora of different cultures mixing in with that. So this is where the sound of hip hop came from. So as a kid, growing up, I saw, the gangs making a truce, and they started doing this thing called freestyle before b-boying. Freestyle was something that people did and challenged each other dancing. And basically, freestyle was just some stuff you made up. And it got kind of, how you say it, technical, because you had people that were trained by Alvin Ailey, and you had kids from performing arts or Juilliard, And so you had some people dancing, you had some people that had their instruments with them, and you have a circle. And so, at Central Park, we would go out to Central Park at the time in the 70s, and we'd be out there, and the guys with the congas would come, guitars, somebody have a drum set or buckets, or they have their drumsticks on the buckets, and we just have a good time, and everybody just got together and just jammed. And lyricists, singers singing harmony at the same time. That's what brought people to New York. That's what made New York pop to the rest of the world, is our getting together, and also the Puerto Ricans and blacks. There's a statement from one of the elders that I remember. You said you put a Puerto Rican and black in a room by themselves. Hey, you got a party. But it is what it is. But hip hop back then to me was about us entertaining each other. We were stressed out. We were going through. Well, the growing pains were not having enough money. Starving. You had kids that were starving. You had the next door neighbors borrowing milk from you. You remember the knock on the door. Hey, can I borrow a glass of sugar? Let me get one of them cups of milk. Let me get some of them. You got any eggs at your house? Nigga, you just went to the store and bought some eggs. I need some eggs. That's the way it was back then. So that time it was struggle. So most of the music that came out of our people was about struggle, and that's what made hip hop. As far as the condition of the people, because like I said, we were poor. The government was working against the poor, and we had the gangs, or what you so-called organizations. They weren't gangs, like the Young Lords. You had the Black Panthers. You had the US organizations in California. You had Vice Lords. You had all of the stuff throughout the United States, in the cities and in the suburbs, that came to the aid of their people, and they created free lunch, and like the Puerto Ricans say, free lunch, and then they had the morning, afternoon, and evening classes. Most kids were and then you had the teachings of basketball, and you had a lot of mentors. You had your big brother type of situations going on back then. So we looked out for each other. So music and our our communication was about getting together and helping each other. We all were struggling, doing bad. So now we have a situation where back then we grew up in the same house. We slept in the same beds. We shared each other's pants. We shared each other's shoes. We shared each other's hats, books. We helped each other with our classes and going through school. And so there was a unity there that you couldn't break. And so you had those people now that are grown now, and they see this, and it's a shame to see that we don't have that anymore. It's sad that out of a travesty was something good was implanted in the people. So out of those people, which I call God's children, those are people that are not moved by the system. And as far as the decisions of the system, we don't sway ourselves in that situation, because we have our culture, which we were brought up in. And again, culture, when we talk about culture, you're talking about people that were practicing voodoo back then. You had people that practiced Yoruba, Santeria. You had people, some of them practicing Taoism, Buddhism. You had Islam. You had Pentecostal, you had Baptist, you had Catholic, you had Mormons, you had Puritans, you had all of these different beliefs that were still, relevant in these times. So it was a how would you say, a melting pot of all of these different cultures, beliefs, and mentalities, and how do you say philosophies being used that created the hip hop revolution. There was also the homosexuals. There was the punk rockers. You also had the gangs. You had the conscious crew. You had oh boy, you had so many. You had the women's lib movement going on. You had all of these things believing in different things, and they governed their lives by these different beliefs. And so when it came to some music, creating music or creating dance, it all fused together. And it's sort of like the concept of saying there are many gods, and then there's one God. So just to give it a clarity, just hip hop came out of that. That one thing came out of it, and it was different things, but it was accepted. Um, Homosexuality was a major thing back then, which a lot of people at that time in the 70s was considered a mental, what you call it, a mental deformity or a form of retardation or outcast or taboo back then. We didn't call them homosexuals. We called them sissies or faggots or bulldaggers or dykes back then. We had so many names, and some people made fun of it again because the prejudices of not knowing or the ignorance is just plain ignorance, not knowing what that person went through, and it had to do with a lot of the abuse we were going through back then. So the Catholic Church was molesting kids and getting busted for it, and but yet the Catholic Church kept going, and nobody shut that organization down. So that's what it was back then. And but you knew back then your mother and father, before you went out to school, told you to stay away from certain people or certain areas where they knew, or you knew exactly who the pervert was back then. So, but even gay people looked out for the kids, made sure they were all right, made sure they got home safe, protect the kids as they was coming home. So even gay people changed. So, but it's a good thing because why I say that is because it created hip hop. The straight couples, the how you say it, the poly couples back then, because you had poly relationships back then. Even in Islam, a man can have 8 wives. And even in Mormonism, the Mormons, you had that going on. I don't know about that in what do you call that other religion? The one Michael Jackson was in. But anyway, going into that, um, back to what I was saying, just it all built hip hop. Hip hop was something that the young boys used to impress the girls, who can dance, who can pop the best, who can battle somebody and burn the other kid so he can get the recognition, he get a street rep or just a reputation amongst the neighborhood. And like that kid Joe Ski up in the Bronx, he was the nicest in that area of around Fordham Road, or this kid in Brooklyn named Peter. He was the nicest, in East New York or something like that. Or you had some cat that was in Brownsville named Boo, that was the nicest. So you had battles that started, coming out of it because it became aware as people were. It was actually helping each other because become better at the craft. Because when you battled, you realized, oh, this didn't impress the people. Okay, what he's doing is impressing the people. So then you take, maybe they'll look at it and they'll take it and then they'll improve on it and then come back and battle somebody else or the same person and then beat them that next time. And that helped them improve their craft of, battling, whether it was lyrical, dance, beatboxing, I mean, you had many different ways to battle each other, and that element I miss a lot. Um, but if if we had that now, these kids, which is an element that helps them communicate with each other in a positive way, and it was more people looking out for each other. Like me growing up, I had my uncle aunt who's not much older than me, and then I had my boy Shadi, uh, that we grew up together, and we would watch all what was going on around us and stuff like that. Basically, we grew up in as like I said, the family was conscious. We weren't no dumbs. We weren't no dumb kids. And Shadi was Muslim. I was Muslim. Anthony wasn't Muslim, but I started introducing him to it. But he was basically one of those cats that was like on the outskirts of it. He didn't really understand it, but uh, he did respect it. Um, so we went forward and we just started singing together, and we created some harmonies. And we was out there walking around, going on the 8 train, the 2 train, the 5 train, the 4 train, 6 train. We ride up to Harlem, uh, ride up to the Bronx. We ride through Brooklyn, Bed Stuy. We walk down the streets. Wherever we walked, we sang, and we would run into other cats that were singing, and we'll join up with them and start singing. We even went down like even to Tompkins Park in Brooklyn, in Bed Stuy, where we would see like Larry Banks, who was a popular producer, um, would be down in the youth center there, and we would work with the band, and we recorded some songs with them, and that was our everyday life, and that kept us out of trouble. So, but the other side of that was, gangs, and getting out there fighting with each other. Either you was helping each other or you was hurting each other back in the day, and you always had that element of people, scheming on you, trying to rob you, and that was something that you was very aware of back then. So, hip hop was hard. It was tough. It was depressing. It was disappoint. It was disappointing. It was innovative. It was everything. You can't even really put your finger on or put it into a category of what hip hop was back then. But the music industry, again, because of our ancestors, they grew into this thing called the Chitterling, or they created this thing called the Chitterling circuit, doing the same things that me and my uh, uh, cohorts was doing, and but in more of like across the United States, from the old days, they were musicians, singers, rappers, and we didn't call them rappers back then. Bebop, they called it, and scatters, and singers, and just so on and so on. People that played the tub and the washboard, and they incorporate that as a instrument or whatever. Spoons, they use spoons to make a rhythm. They had the banjo, they had the guitar, they had the bass, they had the pianos, and all kinds of things to play, a rhythm. And whether it was a music or just a drum acoustic sound, they used it. In school, I can relate with that. In school, we didn't have drums, so we hip hop. Real, I would say hip hop started in the classroom and being bored at detention, and we had these desks that we sat at that was connected with the iron pipes and had the wooden top, flat top, and you would lean on it and you would fall asleep in detention. And so while you're sleeping, you got your head down, and then you just start, you got your face in your on your shoulder, or on your forearm, and then you were like boom, boom, bah, boom, boom, bah, boom, boom, bah, boom, boom, and then so that drew attention, and then your classmates would come in and just start saying hip hop the hibbit the hibbity the hip hop, say 1 2 3, you don't stop, come on yo, come alive yo, or then you start spitting lyrics and rhyming words and poetry to that rhythm you were banging out on the desk. So I think people forgot about the the school desk that they created back then because they had some great acoustics, and that's truly uh, the start of hip hop. Banging on desks, banging on buckets with drumsticks, that because you couldn't afford drums. Um, so the desk and the bucket was was the option. So and people created other things out of wood and metal to create a drum or an acoustic instrument. So but again, it made these kids geniuses, and it helped them open their inner minds and brought them to understand sound and how that sound affected them and how it brought them together and it kept them together. So I think that's what's missing nowadays. Again, I can't see any of the comments. If anything's coming up, if there's any, I'm not boasting or even guessing that there will be comments, but I'm just my first time doing a live, y'all, and just wanted to talk about because I have such a long history in doing music, being around a lot of celebrities. I was one of those kids who, I knew Diana Ross, I knew Evelyn Champagne King, I knew Nipsey Russell, I knew um, uh, 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 if you can Terrence Howard. I used to see him every day. I knew just people that were in the entertainment business back then, even when they weren't yet in the entertainment business. I was around them. I was walking around them. I knew LL Cool J from a kid, when he was rapping with Mikey D. Jackson. I knew Casanova Rudd and Super Lover C back in the days at the Rochdale Village competition. They would have a talent show there, and you would see different cats. I knew Tragedy personally. I knew Father MC. He was my best friend. We used to write in his bedroom at his mother's house, and we would just go in on writing lyrics. And Father was trying to get his stuff on the radio. I knew somebody like this cat called Fendi. His name was Peter Moore, and he was the coldest popping and locking artist in Queens. I knew Busta Rhymes back in the day when they were kids. I knew Tretch. I knew oh boy, if you're going down the line, oh boy, Chris Rock when he was a kid. I know his uncle. His uncle was one of our managers that we did the album with, Raymond Reed. What's up, Ray Rock? Which Chris Rock took his name from. Oh boy, I knew Burt Reed, who started the whole hip hop movement from the beginning with Ty Fly and Jekyll and Hyde and just back in the days when the first rap artists got on wax. I knew who made that happen. I knew our managers, Donnie Linton and Bubba Anderson and William Anderson, and my partner that was in my group, which was Sandy Anderson, who played the bass for Crown Heights of Fear. I knew Crown Heights of Fear. I knew the Crusaders that sang the first street song that put it on the map, Street Life. Just being around Juilliard, I met a lot of the musicians, and being around at the clubs, going club hopping, I knew all of these. Dougie Fresh, I used to see him all the time. I knew, I can't forget my brothers, Sticky and Fredro. They used to cut my hair out on Guy Brewer, Sticky and Fredro of the Onyx. And boy, just so many people. My man Cheeks, but again, I don't want to go into all of this stuff. But just to say, I was around all of these people when they were coming into it. Freaky Ty, rest in peace, Freaky Ty. I was around these brothers, and these men made a major impression on the world. They had people from all around the world listening to their music, and I got to see all of that, happening through my uncles Walter, John, and Bernard, and my mother Marilyn Lindsay. Us being up in SIR studios at Right Track Studios. A lot of people don't know about Right Track. Quiet Studios. Just so many SIR studios. I remember being there, and my brother Freedom, Peace to Freedom. Oh yeah, Bow-Legged Lou, peace to you, and hope everything's good with you. And just remember those days, Studio 54, when I was a kid. I don't know if you remember when that kid got stuck inside the vents. We knew that was one of my friends. we used to sneak in there to see all of the stars through the vents. But it's so many. How can I say? It's so many people that came from the New York City era. And I say this much, even in acting, those people like my brother Terrence Howard, peace to you. Um, uh, just that New York vibe, that like what I talked about, what we grew up in, that being around that struggle, and that the essence of not having, and then just getting a piece of, and then getting to look at something that you want and can't have it, but then make your own little version of it somehow. Or your success, you create your own little type of success amongst your people, even if it ain't worldwide. You had something on your block, you had something in your neighborhood, you had something in your city that people knew about, like Ra out in Long Island, Brentwood, Long Island, EPMD, my boy Pete, I told you about, he used to dance for them. My boy Tricky Moet from Far Rockaway, that was the creative dancers that did all the dance moves, and a lot of people learned from them, as far as like a lot of the video dancing was concerned. If I can go into a deeper, just remembering my great uncle, and knowing that he was out there from the 50s, doing his thing with the music industry and singing, and then on the conscious side, my elder and my family, James Warden, just so many people, my God family, my musical godfather, Reggie Seegers, rest in peace. Um, my God uncle, Reverend Philip Valentine, um, Queen Afua, Baba, Dr. York, just all the conscious teachings that were going on. I need to say these things because these are things that people need to research, and those names that I gave you were a major influence on hip hop and what made it such a world stopping sound and culture that people paid attention to. Um, it's just the Rocksteady crew, the New York City Breakers, Uptown Rockers. I mean, just so many groups of people that I was around, that I grew up around, that I know all of them. I can't remember all their names. There's so many of them. Um, oh boy, just being around all that stuff, it created this thing where, and it affected everybody differently. I wasn't one that was on TV. I had a lot of conscious, involvement, studying, you know, Egyptology and Commission sciences and things like that, and knowing thyself and learning a lot about Native American culture. I branched off in that more because I was more into what the people were doing and what affected the cultures and what my culture was, and learning myself. So some kids branched off into just uh, the creative side of getting out there and performing, and some people were just they perform when they were around their people. So I got a phone call. I don't know who the hell that is, but anyway, Hip hop was a fusion of homosexual culture, which was another culture that we were affected by indirectly. Even if you weren't homosexual, you end up being affected by it because of the when it got on TV. Like you saw the Slick Ricks, you saw the Dana Danes, and you got it sounded like some British invasion type of thing, but it was actually brothers from Fort Greene and Brooklyn doing their thing, dudes from Harlem, and you just went along with it because somehow it fit into the hip hop culture, and because that's what the foundation was, so it had to ring through some way. Um, so you had the conscious community, which created the how do you say it, the understanding of knowledge, understanding of self, um, uh, which you had at the time. You had the five percenters, you had the Nuwapians, you had the Hebrew Israelites going at it. Those are the main three that really sparked this off. And then you had your then different teachers that were going around. Dr. Ben, Kaba Kameen, from back in the days. My main ones were Dr. York, Reverend Philip Valentine, Queen Afua, Q Kingdom Ministries. It was a whole lot for me back then. My mother was a minister. Well, she is a minister of all religions, and being around the Hebrews, studying the Christianity, studying the history of the Knights Templar, studying all of this stuff was a part of hip hop. Don't think I'm skating off into something else. It's all about what we're going through right now, and this is where it rings through, and people are seeing certain things being represented, but the other part of hip hop is not being represented, and that is the struggle, the civil rights movement, the unity that was lost because everybody's chasing, uh, again, I would say Master's crumbs. We're chasing Master's crumbs instead of um, building ourselves up so we'll have our own crumbs to pass to our own. Um, we have to stop um, chasing Master's crumbs because we ain't, it's truly that's all it is Master's crumbs. But back to the hip hop industry. Um, Hip hop to me, I remember, you know, me. I can break it down. My brother Shadi Heru and Anthony Lindsay. Peace to you. And we were around all of these things, and I was singing, walking around New York and traveling from Harlem and singing in Harlem, singing at the Apollo, us winning the Apollo and getting a standing ovation, and then hooking up with my cousin, which I didn't know, Ralph Cooper. Peace to my elder Ralph Cooper. Check him out on Facebook. Um, um, Linking up with him, and then at the time when we won at the Apollo, um, my friend, well, my homeboy, Father MC, Tim Brown, peace to you. One of his dancers, Puffy, was at the the Apollo, and he approached us, and because me, Shadi, and Anthony, created our own outfits and our own music. I produced the music from scratch. I used the MU to create the track that we was on. We did the song "Can't Stop" over "Get in Touch with Me" with the "Impeach the President," and I think another sample that I had in there. Um, I think two samples I put in there extra, but I created this track where we sang um, after sevens can't stop over Get in Touch with Me, and it came out to where we blew the minds of the Apollo, and we really got a great response from that, and they encored us. And but Puffy was there, my uncle Bernard from Intensive Heat. Peace to my uncle. He was there, and but he was watching out for us at the time. We didn't sign with Puffy. Puffy was starting the Bad Boy record label at that time. This is before it even existed. This is before Biggie and Mary J. Blige, and before any groups were on that label. Puffy was putting all of these things together to get this going. He actually worked through Andre Harrell. I knew of Andre Harrell because of Donnie Linton. Donnie Linton was the one that put Andre Harrell into business and did business along with Burt Reed and just a whole slew of people that were working together to create a black sound and black record labels and productions and all that stuff at that time. But Puffy wanted to sign us, and he loved our outfits, and he was sweating us, and I was like, so I said, hey, I think about it, and then my Uncle B came up and told him, he said, I'm their manager, and he wasn't our manager, but because they just put their album out in 1982, and we just put the album out in 1982, and I guess he didn't want us to do any backgrounds or do any our own thing at the time because we was with Intensive Heat, and and we were performing at all of the shows, the Red Zone, the Red Parrot, Indigo Blues, the Arc. We was all over the place, just naming all the clubs that we was at. Red Zone, what was it? Spodiotes. We was at the Saturns. It was a lot of different clubs, but that was the touring days. But Puffy wanted to sign us, and he said no. He said I'm their manager, and he said something to B, and B just told him, nah, you can't sign him. They no, that I don't think that's a good enough deal. So we didn't sign with Puffy, and Puffy walked away, and then so we didn't deal with that. And we saw him later, and we realized that Puffy took our idea with the outfits we had on and the concept, the whole visual from the stage and the music and the sampling of what we called in the music industry spike track, which would be something you sampled from another record and blended with a bass line, or you put a keyboard over it, or we call that a spike track. That's what that's called. And we had my spike track that I created had a sound to it, and which Puffy heard that sound and used that sound to create Bad Boy Sound, which was sampled hip hop beats and over chords and bass lines and so on and so on. And you can create whatever you want over it and just make your own version of it from that point on. I understood certain things with music because my father, I was a piano kid. My father really was strict on learning piano, and I had 3 pianos. I had a standard, electric, and we had keyboards in the house too. My dad was a guitar player also. So, and he played bass, and so my father was like well-rounded, and then he was also a vocal teacher. So, we were big on vocals. So this is why when we sang, our vocals were so excellent, because of the push that my father gave and how stern he was on sounding correct and hitting the right key of the note and knowing your keys and intonation. So, but that's something that you have to learn through vocal teachings and things like that. So Puffy walked off, and that was it. And then, as like I said, later we see this group called 112, and they got on these outfits, and then they're singing this song, and I was like, wait a minute, that sounds like our shit. That looked like us on there. That outfit, those outfits look like what the hell we had on. Um, I had another incident. Oh boy, Yvette, Aunt Yvette from Brownsville, Japa, Yvette Japa. She created, well, me, Anthony Shadi again. We had another show at Sweetwater's in Manhattan, and we did a show there, and we were performing, and Uncle Walt B. John was there. Ashford and Nick Ashford and Valerie Simpson. They were there. They owned the club, and when we knew them well, and we used to see them all the time. Every time we got to the club, and they come down in the dressing room, and Nick was there, talking to everybody, saying what's up, and then who was performing that night? I think Ray Goodman and Brown was performing that night, and we hung out with them, talked with them, was blowing a breeze with them, and then what pops up in our dressing room was Kid and Play. Yo, Kid and Play comes into the dressing room down at Sweetwater's, which we wanted to call it, changed it to Honeysuckle West. It's on, what is it, 72nd Street, right on Amsterdam Avenue, 72nd and Amsterdam. Or right before 70, I think like 68, 69, somewhere in between there. That's where the club was actually at, but it's called Sweetwater's, affectionately known as Sweetwater's, owned by Nick Ashford and Valerie Simpson. So Kid and Play comes walking into the room, and so we getting our clothes together, we iron our creases in our shirts and stuff like that. We got our little dressing up area. And so they walk into the room, and these niggas walk into where we got our outfits hanging up on the wall. And this motherfucker, excuse me, I still ain't getting no clarity, how you say, balance on this situation. But it's silly, but it's a long time ago. But he sees what we're wearing on stage, what we're about to wear on stage, and so Kid is over there shooting a breeze with my Uncle John, and Uncle B is over here chatting with Play and Walter. Walter's a showman. He's always talking to people. As soon as he saw them, he was like, "What's up?" We giving dap and see what's up, and he's like, "Hey, what's up?" So what up, Kid? What up, Play? And so Play, not knowing that Play is a designer, and being that Intensive Heat, our group Triple Threat, we create our own clothing. We design our stuff, and we got somebody who makes them for us, custom made. So every outfit that we did throughout all the years, from throughout the 80s and the 90s, every outfit that we wore was custom made and created by us. And we have like who created our outfit was a lady whose family from Brownsville, and her name's Yvette Japa, Aunt Yvette. So she can tell you the story, but so they're coming down and playing and shooting the breeze and kicking it and talking, and Play standing there with his sitting there back like this, like checking out the outfits on. Well, he said, "Man, that's a nice outfit there, man. Who you say who outfits are the who outfit is that?" And so he's like, "Yeah, we made that outfit." And he's like, "Oh man," he said, "that's a badass outfit." He said, "Who made those pants?" And he was like, "We made the pants too, man." And so it was like sort of like we picked up on this nigga was sweating our shit. And so but we took it as an impression, or we appreciated the compliments and things like that. And then so they took a quick left to the door, and they was out of there. And I was like, "Oh, what they coming down in here for?" And so I always had this little birdie that rings off in my head, something ain't right. So not paying attention, we had to do the show. We had Andre Harrell up there. We had who was performing that night. Ray Goodman and Brown. Who else it was? I think all the Puffies, Andre Harrell's groups. What's his name? Brown. What's the cat's name? That um, I forgot his name. But anyway, it was all of the bad boy, so-called Heavy D's groups was in there, and they performed at the time, and so we went up there, did our show, and it was basically to see what was going on at that time, to see what, as far as getting a deal with I think it was with Andre Harrell and them, and see what they was gonna do, and we just did our show, and that was just a part of the whole evening's entertainment. So anyway, so that time passed, and so then like 2 months later, we see Kid and Play on this Sprite commercial, and we see Kid and Play jumping around in our outfits that match exactly the style that we designed our joints is. And we can see, and when I called my uncle, I said, yo, John, I said, look, I said, yo, I said, this nigga stole our fucking ideas. He stole our outfits. And it kind of pissed me off, because then that's where that street came out of me. These motherfuckers don't, excuse my language, but they were stealing, design ideas. So at the time, they were doing a Sprite commercial. So we looking at Sprite commercial, and I said, hey, yo, I said, the collar, I said, the different color collar, the cuffs, and the different color cuff on the pants. The shirt cuffs was different color. The shirt cuffs matched the collar and the pocket, and then the pants had where we had our pants, the cuff on the pants matched. So not knowing that these, and we looked at the outfit and said, these outfits that's our outfits, that's our design. And so that's where the beef with Kid and them, never approached them about it, and never got a chance to approach him about it. But I ended up running the Kid in Omaha, and these dudes look a little scary. So they wasn't street niggas. So and again, at that time, I forgot about it. By the time it was in the 2000s and stuff, and Kid was there doing comedy at this club up in Nebraska. So but anyway, going back to the culture, even though we were stealing, which we called it biting back then, we called it beat biting. If you took a beat idea, a drum track, and bit off of somebody else's idea, if they used it, even if you sampled somebody's idea, and you bit off of somebody and somebody bites off of you, we call it biting. So whether it was lyrically, music wise, dressing wise, I don't know if a lot of people remember these days. Just style wise, you like people call it swag now, and people biting their swag and stuff like that, and it's just basically copying something that they saw that was fly back then. It was the fly era. So you had niggas that wore Bally's, you had niggas that wore Timberlands, you had niggas that wore British Walkers. Some of them wore Playboys and the different colors. And Lotto. Some people were sneaker bound, with the Jordans or the Lottos or the Diodoras, or you had the shell top Adidas, shell top Adidas, and you had the Pumas, and you had the Keds. Even in earlier days, some of them rocked the Jocks, some of them rocked the Ponies, some of them rocked the Felines, and just the color combinations and the style that you wore, and that was your thing. So, and that's what made you stand out in the neighborhood. So, our thing was we sang, and niggas hated us because we sang girls' panties off, and we would take their girlfriends. So, we were kids back then. It was one of those things, and no harm intended. But that was love back then. Me and my brother Shadi was talking about that just the other day. We got to get back to that element, and these are things that until I get this thing correct, and so I can see comments, I can't pull up any comments. Maybe I need to press something for that to happen. Just wondering. I don't know if it's actually uh, coming up. Oh, okay. Oh boy. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. This is a. Hey. I think I got it. I just hit the bell there. Uh, I'm acknowledge these people. My little cousin Utopia Paj. Peace to you. I didn't know that I was getting people chiming in. My brother Paul Eagle, my elder, the legend Paul Eagle. Hey, my brother, I would love to talk about that talk box stuff. Oh, getting back into the funk. Oh, the talk box stuff. Peace to brother Paul Eagle on Facebook. Um, Peace to brother Ben X. Oh boy. Peace to my brother Don Samad on mature hip hop. People, if I would shout him out because I'd like people to tune into mature hip hop. My cousin Don Samad, he's got his platform there. Tune into that. There's a lot of good information on there and things to get into. My brother Shy Morton from Far Rock. Sugar Gaga, Alejandro. Peace to you, my family. Peace to my brother Marco Sinsun, who's chimed in. I see you. Monet Schultz, Pam Jeanette, the bass player. Peace to you. And my sister, Y de Dios y Gainayam, my cousin Lewis. Peace to you. So all the people that chimed in, thank you for chiming in. I'm gonna make sure I get these things together. But again, going into the Chitterling circuit and back to hip hop. Chitterling circuit was hip hop. That was the beginning of hip hop. What black people did for other black people. You may have had back then women. You know, when we was growing up, women were madams. You had a lot of prostitutes that black women made money from prostituting back in the days. So in the city where I lived at, there were prostitutes everywhere. When you walked on 40 Deuce, it was prostitutes, gay prostitutes, Eddie Murphy. I used to see him all the time out there. We had just the kung fu era was that's another thing that contributed to the hip hop era, which we were affected by as kids. Um, Watching the White Lotus, the Five Deadly Venoms, Wu Tang kicked off and took that idea and really turned it into something wonderful for Staten Island Wu Tang. And shouts out to the Wu Tang. Rest in peace, my brother Timothy Hom, who produced for Method Man and Street Knowledge. And boy, all of the kung fu movies, all of the porn movies that were in the city, that affected hip hop. So it was a sexualized. So you had a lot of stuff going on with my brother NC Shan out there. Peace to Shan. That joint that was bumping back in the day, Project Ho. Just all of that stuff was sexualized music. Some rappers had sexual lyrics. Some of them had, basically, bragging on themselves type of thing. And then some of them had stories, like Slick Rick and Dana Dane was storytellers. And then you had Rakim, and you had K Solo, you had KRS-One, you had Big Daddy Kane. Peace to Antonio. Peace, my brother Antonio Hardy. just y'all, my brother Scoob. I can't forget my brother Scoob. That's my boy. We used to hang out back in the days. Well, now he's family. I didn't know he was family the whole time. But peace to y'all. And all of these things, the kung fu, the porn industry, the killings that were going on back in the 70s. We used to walk through New York City, and I'm telling you, I used to walk down the street and I'd see a dead body on the corner and laying in the gutter. Those things, the tragedies of that, the gang violence back then, the family fights. Let me talk about that for a minute. I grew up around a lot of, how you say, issues of the black community. You talking about, the cheating on the husbands and the husbands cheating on the wives, and the multiple families, and just everything. Then everybody didn't agree with everybody's groove. You know what I'm saying? And polygamy mixing in a Christian culture, and you got people who are Muslim going to Catholic school. You got people who are Muslim studying Taoism, which is and Buddhism, which is Kung Fu. So it was a fusion of a lot of different things. Just all of this stuff is a part of hip hop. If I can take you back to a time when we were kids, we used to, walk through Brooklyn, and you go through a certain street. Maybe you get off on Kosciuszko in Bed-Stuy, and you get out the train station, and you come down those stairs, and you walk down Kosciuszko, and you had a block that was pitch black, and these are some of the most dangerous blocks you can walk down, going straight down. If you pass Marcus Garvey, going down, and you pass Troop Avenue, and you're going down, and you're on Green Avenue, you cut over to Green Avenue, going down into Tompkins Park area, Tompkins Avenue, just Lafayette Gardens. You go through Marcy Projects. You go through, and you remember after Marcy Projects, you had the Jews. So the flavor and the vibe changed when you got over near the Jews. But that was dangerous in itself also, because we looked at Jews as perverts when we were kids, because we knew about the pedophilia back then that was going on. So, and it's not that that's the total understanding of those people, but that's the way it was when we were kids. They were weirdos to us. So, and still weirdos this day. But being that we gained knowledge as we grew up, we learned to develop that and incorporate that in our knowledge, and knowing things that we need to, pay attention to. Is anybody else plugging in? Okay. Hey, my cousin Chris. What's up, Chris? Chris Cherry. Peace to my cousin. Peace. You on that road, or you out? You home? I'm wondering. Yeah. Hey, Miss Twins. Hey, peace to you, sister. I see you. Yeah. Just talking about. I was one of those kids that you can remember, who just talking about hip hop, coming from the city. I was around Juilliard. I was around performing arts. I was around the Met. I grew up around Central Park area. I was all over the city. I traveled back to Brooklyn. My grandmother's house is in Brooklyn, and I stayed with her many days and hours. And when my mother was running around working at the transit, I stayed with my grandmother in Bed-Stuy. And then I had my grandmother over in Brownsville from my father's side, my grandma Marguerite. And she was a bruja. And she taught me a lot about herbs and plants and things like that. So that's another part of hip hop that people don't talk about, which is a major understanding of the body, learning how the eating health and those things were being taught back then. Again, I have to shout out Reverend Philip Valentine, Dr. York, Baba Dr. York. I have to shout out Kaba Kameen. Peace to you. I love your knowledge. Thank you for the teachings. Keep teaching. These kids need this. This is what helped me to understand and look things to look at things the right way. And if we didn't have those things, if I didn't have those things, I can speak for myself only. I wouldn't be able to understand all of the weirdness and the strange things that go on in this world that we live in nowadays, and to get through these hard times. Those are the things that gets us through these times, is those teachings and the understandings of self, and not outcasting vital information. But yeah. Oh, there was a book back in the days with my mother and my father, because we were vegetarian. I forgot to talk about that. We were vegetarians. A lot of people were vegetarians back, not vegans. There was no such thing as a vegan back then. It was vegetarians. And vegetarians, they ate fish once in a while, but they ate vegetables and a lot of beans, rice, and fennel and couscous and all that stuff. And we ate a lot of falafels back then, because along with the vegetarianism, we had Islam. So in studying Islam, we ate certain things, and that blended with vegetarianism. And so again, when as a vegetarian, when I went to Bed-Stuy, to my grandma's house, right up on, if you know where Do the Right Thing, my brother Spike Lee. Shout out to my brother Spike Lee and my cousin Calvin Clark. They filmed the movie on the block that my grandmother's house and my uncle's house on the corner. Spike was pictured coming out of my uncle's house on the corner. My Uncle Harold, rest in peace, and my grandmother Elizabeth Lindsay Jones, rest in peace. I love you. And when I went over her house, my grandmother was one of those women who fed the whole block. That's another part of hip hop that they don't talk about. They don't talk about the unity of what strangers would look out for you just out of love for their people. You had where we lived on Stuyvesant and Gates, and say I would walk down to Troop Avenue, and somebody would catch me. What you doing down here? And I don't know who this person is, and I'm on my bike, and I'm doing some dirty stuff on Troop Avenue. And so when I got down there, then ain't your grandmother named Elizabeth? And I'd say, yeah. They say, you better get your butt back home. You know you ain't supposed to be all the way down there. How did you get down here? You know you ain't supposed to be right. You're supposed to stay on the block. Didn't your grandmother tell you to stay on the block? And I'd say, yes. And then, you better get back there because your grandmother looking for you. And so I'd skate back on my Randor bike, performance bike, and shoot back up to the block, and to see if my grandmother was waiting out in the gate at the brownstone to see if they looking for me. And so I went in the house, and my grandmother be cooking, and she had these big giant army pots. I'm telling you, them pots was huge, and she like 50 gallons of lima beans, and then she have a big giant pot of ham hocks. Then she would have a big giant pot of what you would say is some kind of vegetable cooking. Then she would have a big giant pot in the stove with a turkey in it, or she'd have some steak, or she'd have chicken, or just going down the line. She would cook everything. So when she finished cooking, it was so much food. I didn't know how in the world are we gonna eat all this food, but my grandmother never wasted no food. She would feed us. It was 22 of us. My cousins would be there. Everybody coming over. My aunts, all my aunts. My aunt Lindy would drop Tawana, Lindy Mazak. She'd drop Tawana and Lily off and be there. And they'd be there with us. And Uncle Junior you know, then you had my aunt Elaine, you had all my cousins. It was 22 of us. I could count it from this point on. Um, on all my uncles, all my aunts, and we filled that house up. And then you had people that rented rooms from my grandmother, Mr. Blake, God bless his soul, and Mr. Alex. They used to rent a room in my grandmother's house on the upstairs. It was 5 floors in that brownstone, and so she would cook, and so when she cooked, everybody had a overflowing plate, and my grandmother still had full pots, enough to bring it out and go next door, go across the street, and my friend Danny and Nessa be across the street from where we lived at, and she bring them plates, full plate, and anybody that you would have the door being knocked on. And then my grandmother, hey, give that plate to so and so, give that plate to so and so, and I'll bring this over to so and so. She wanted this cooked for them, you know. Bring this plate of rice over to Miss Parker over there, you know, at the corner, you know. And we would do errands for my grandmother and stuff like that. So the getting together of family and the community would come into our family dinner time, lunchtime, breakfast. It wasn't no holds barred back then. Knocking on the door, y'all got some sugar? Y'all got some? That was hip hop, believe it or not. And it wasn't about us, you know, not trusting each other. They trusted my grandmother. She cooked their food. They ate well, you know, for years. And, you know, any one of my uncles and my cousins can vouch for this. My grandmother fed the whole neighborhood. I'm telling you, you had people that would come out from 2 blocks away and get a plate from my grandmother. It wasn't no punk when it came to my grandmother cooking. And she was proud of her cooking. And but there was dysfunctions and things like that went on back then. But you know, it is what it is. You know what I'm saying? We had our elders to keep us in check. If we got out of line, we got in line and got our asses whooped. So I'm not going to talk about that any further, but they know, my cousins know what that is. And we wouldn't play with that. There's this thing that they used to do back in the day called a Cuban Pinch. Then they had the nails. They would grow these thick nails, their thumbnail and their pointer fingernail, and they would dig into your arm and pinch the shit out you. You motherfucker! Didn't I tell you? Or they grab behind your ear and pinch the shit out your ear, and then put you in the house and throw you in the room. But that was discipline back then. So, or that belt. And I don't need to talk about that one. But my grandmother came from South Carolina, North Carolina, that teaching, the Cherokee background. On my father's side, we had the Mohawk and the Mohegan. My grandmother, she was Mohawk. My grandfather, not Winnebago. I'm about to say Winnebago, but Pequot. Yeah, Pequot. And then we have my grandfather was Taino Indian. And so it was so much in the Cherokee. So I had multiple Cherokee grandmothers, 2 grandmothers were Cherokee. And then I had a Mohawk grandmother. So I was talking about my great grandmother. So this is why I cherish the Native American side. When you see this flag, Que bonita bandera, I understand that these what that means. You know, it's culture. It's a Taino nation as one. But you know, and not being less the wise of all the other cultures that created me. You know, it takes billions of people to create us. So when you understand that, this is why we have these different sides of ourselves, and we have to keep ourselves in check. And hip hop was a discipline. The breakdancing, the practicing so you can battle, how to burn this cat. You locking and you doing the popping and wave, or you remember we used to do this when we was kids back in the day. And everybody, we used to make long lines down the block and do a big giant wave. That was big back then. The footwork on the up rock and the floor work, and it was just the time put into so you can burn this kid at school. Lyrically, the rapping, the battling lyrically, the poets putting their lyrics together, and those people like Nas and Kane and KRS-One and all these cats. That's what they came from. Shouts out to Bismarck, that's my brother, doing his thing with the beatbox, and oh boy, the battles of the beatbox. Shouts out to the Human Orchestra, my brother, my big brother, Kenny Muhammad, Nation of Islam. Peace, my brother. Peace to you. Love you, man. And those days of when they used to battle each other before they got famous. Razel, peace to my brother Razel. Oh my gosh, there's so many people. Just going into even back to the sampling of those things, or those elements, those acoustics that created banging on the school desks. Herbie Hancock, shouts out to Herbie, Mr. Herbie Hancock, the genius, who was the main one who made it digitally able to create human acoustics and put that into a digital machine. And it's so many things. Stevie Wonder was another one who was a pioneer in it. A lot of brothers and sisters who were into electronics back then and studying that, and which came from the more sciences. You have to understand that the hip hop came from the more sciences, the playing chess, the understanding of darkness and light. Music is not just music. It's not about the muse. Muse are, a lot of people don't know, the term music comes from the word the muse, who the muse were demons in Greek mythology, or spirits, if you want to call it. But music comes from Morris' understanding of vibration. The first instrument, a lot of people, and I got to put this down in there, the first instrument was a instrument called the lute. It's if you can think of a banjo or a guitar with less strings, and I think it had one or two strings, and this was used by the elders in Egyptian Commission understanding and mythology. If you understand, there's 12, the understanding the structure of 12, which is 3, which is the Trinity, and it's connected to God. So this is why music is personal to the spirit. This is why music touches the spirit, because it has to do with the Trinity. And so has to do with family. 3, 12. There's 12 notes in the great staff. There's 12 scales. So do your math, or do your metuneta, if you understand that these are teachings of Dr. Ben Yakinen taught these things. Dr. Malachi York, my elder Philip Valentine taught these things. It was taught by so many people. Even Malcolm X understood vibrations. This is why I don't call myself a musician. I call myself a vibration a chemist, because it's sort of like a, a chemist who puts together ingredients of the elements of the earth. And you would think about zinc and copper and water, and fire, air, all of these different elements of the earth, and putting those things together creates creates something else to happen, or a cause creates an effect. So the cause, when you create a chord, there's 12 notes. So if you put any combination of those 12 notes together, you get a chord. And what's a chord? It's not a string. But a chord is also a combination of strings put together. It's not just one string. It's actually multiple strings wrapped together. If you think of a wicker basket, it's a combination of different branches wrapped together to create one bowl, or whatever you're creating, a blanket, or you want to create a tapestry, or you want to create anything that has to do with creation. It's about creation. So to get out of that and back to it, music is, and trust me, every note in the 12 notes of the great staff, it has a purpose. It's sort of like if you thought of the 12 disciples of Jesus, Peter, Paul, all of these different guys that were there, Judas, Jesus, the 13th string, if you may. But the 12 disciples, think of the 12 disciples when you're doing music. So this is what makes it personal. When somebody who loves music, they love God, and they're about God, but they're in tuned with God. And so when you create a song, you're creating a purpose to that song. So the notes you pick create a mood or an effect. The chords or the chord causes an effect. So in Egyptian times, in Commission history, the Egyptians used this instrument called a lute. And it was sort of like a medical instrument. And there's another thing called a medicinal ankh, where you would strike the tune and hit a certain note, and that note would help to heal you. So think of those 12 notes as that same thing, a medicinal ankh. Each string is medicinal. And so, okay, going into, if you take a major chord, a major chord would sound like, how can you say? Okay, this is a major chord. C major. So there's 12 notes. If you think about 12 notes. So the first note and the 12th note are octaves of it. It's the same note, but at a higher register. And so I just walked up the 12 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then that last one, which is the 13th, is Jesus. So if you think of Jesus and religion, God, Jesus. You start with God and you end up with Jesus, the 13th note. But you got to go through all the notes to get to Jesus. So the completion, how do you say, the triad? So the triad. Three notes playing together. So all these notes have an effect. It has a feel. If you do any chord, when you play a certain chord, you have a certain emotion that affects you. Just to get off the piano, um, it affects you a certain way. So know that either spiritually you learn what purpose of that certain chord is, or you know it by hearing it, or they play a certain chord in a certain song, and there's certain songs that are repeated in music and in hip hop, whether it's rap or R&B, jazz, uh, classical, whatever music genre you got, blues, uh, salsa. Uh, those notes have a purpose, and they make you feel. And the purpose is to heal that certain. So this is why certain songs, like if you hear Marvin Gaye's song, "Let's Get It On," he's talking about something sexual. So the chords he's using in his song is to create a sexual environment. And so music, the sound surrounds you. This is why they call it surround sound, because it embodies you. It pulls you in. It surrounds you in a sense and encapsulates you, and you feel the mood that it's pushing to you. And so understanding that, and so just like hip hop is a chord. It surrounded us. Say in the city of New York, this movement was going on, and everybody was affected by it. Europeans coming from overseas, they see black people spinning on their heads to this music, and they move in closer to be encapsulated by this environment, and they were captured by the movement that was going on with the music and the rhythms and the syncopations that were going on. It mesmerized them, but didn't know that this music was controlling them in that sense. But this is why music is to be used for good, not for evil. And we have a lot of music that's being used for evil as well as the good. That's the yin and yang. When the Moors came, they taught the Europeans, and they let's see. Okay, hold on a second, y'all. When the Moors came, they taught how to play chess as an entertainment. The chess table has dark, black square, and white squares, darkness and light. And you move your king and queen across the darkness and the light. It's just like in the Bible. What does it starts at? It starts in darkness, and God creates light out of the darkness. So God is darkness, and he creates the light out of darkness. So in that sense, this is what was being taught. And so in understanding, same thing with the piano. You have your natural keys, which are your white keys, and your accidentals, which are your dark keys. And it's not that the darkness is accidental. Darkness is natural, but that's the European concept coming in, because the piano is a European. And remember, the European concept or the Eurocentric thought is the reverse of nature or reality. So the natural keys are supposed to be black, and the accidentals are supposed to be white. So, but we move forward understanding that. So once you understand that everything's in reverse, this is why we have a backwards thinking. So, but hip hop embodied all of these, the confusion and the reality of our culture, who we are, and what we did, and what we taught, and what our ancestors taught. So music is used for, healing. each note that you hit on that lute helped to cure, um, if you will, cancer. Now, the natural ailments that humans had, diabetes, um, lupus, um, any type of what do you call it, arthritis, headaches, um, it's going down the line, stomach aches. Um, but it's according to the knowledge, and this is ancient knowledge, to understand that these chords create healing, but to know the chord structures, the formula. This is why even in science, you have to look at it as science has to do with the mind. You have to know what chords to hit to create healing, for certain healing. If you need to get rid of a headache, you listen to jazz. Some people get a headache and they got to listen. They may drink some coffee or tea. That's another way of creating a vibration internally, and your body creates that vibration. Or you throw on Miles Davis, or you throw on a Luther Vandross. You throw on, if you're upset from coming from work, you throw on a Kim, or you throw on a, how can you say it, Christopher Williams, or you throw on a Keith Washington, or you throw on a Earth, Wind and Fire. You'll throw on Stevie Wonder, a certain song, because that certain song relaxes you, or it makes you feel better. Or when you're going through stuff and you don't have music, you remember a song that relaxes you. So it's another form of being able to do the same thing other than medicine. Medicine is another thing that creates vibrations, a cause or a chord that has an effect. So hip hop, that's what hip hop is. Hip hop was a cause or a chord, if you will, in music that had an effect on the people, but it was for our struggle. It was for our hard times. It was for what we was trying to achieve, the civil rights movement and things like that. So I know I'm kind of long-winded on this, but I wanted to talk about these things because these things are important, is what we're missing. And shouts out to the CW Youth Resource Center. I don't want to get off track. I want to shout out to all of the kids that grew up through the 90s to the 2000s and who are now successful adults, that I was a part of their lives. Shouts out to Terrence Bud Crawford, the young kid that used to sit next to me in my piano, and when I was in my studio, and he became a heavyweight champ. Shouts out to Esther Dean, who wrote hit songs that we're all listening to now. Shouts out to just so many people out there who became doctors, lawyers, accountants, contractors, architects, that came from the CW Youth Resource Center and beyond, because they carry that energy, that, and they're a cause that have an effect on other kids. And hopefully that you're passing that forward, other than keeping that information to yourself. Pass that information that I passed to you, pass it on to someone else. Do what I did in your own version of it, but keep it going. Pay it forward. And God bless. And I don't want to keep it too long. We're gonna get back on this subject again. I'm about an hour and 34 minutes right now and counting. But God bless. My name is Quinn Gill Jr. Rodriguez, also known as Spirit Eagle, a.k.a. the Mighty Quinn. I just wanted to speak on how hip-hop was nothing but another chords, just like we said, the first note to the 12th note. It was the Chitterling circuit to hip hop. Chitterling circuit, hip hop. Same thing. It's the cause to the effect. There's nothing new under the sun. My grandfather, Lucius Bonaparte Jones, taught me. There's nothing new. Shouts out to my father, Gil Rodriguez Sr. I love you. My mother, Marilyn Lindsay Rodriguez. I love you. All my sisters, Raven, Maylene, my brother John, my sister Michaela. I love you. That's my family. And to all my elders that passed on, to my elders that are here, all my uncles, aunts, cousins, I love you all. And shouts out to the Lindsay family, the Jones, the Clarks, all my cousins down south in South Carolina, to Savannah, to Statesboro, Georgia, to Florida, Cocoa Beach, Florida, to Palms Beach, West Palm, all over the place. My family in North Carolina, my family up in Omaha, Nebraska, all of the Fords, the Chapmans. Peace to my family. I love you all. Family to death. I love you, and to life. Peace, everyone, and keep your minds open. Don't listen to anybody else's version of what you know is correct for you. Use your own instincts. In a sense, this is what I talked about all this time, is instinctual repair. You need your instincts on full blast. You have to get back to your instinctual self, and that is yourself, knowing thyself. So, peace, everyone. Love, unity. Bye.